Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Style That Binds Us show. Today, we are so excited to have Lora Lee Gayer. She's a Broadway actress with us. She grew up in New York City and Naples, Florida, and she has starred as young Sally in Follies and Tonia in Dr. Zhivago, Linda in Holiday Inn, and most recently as Emma in Chicago at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell us, to begin, what made you want to become a Broadway actress?
So, so like you said, I was born in New York, and so my first Broadway show was when I was 4. My dad took me for my birthday, and we went and saw Cats. And I guess I was on the edge of my seat and just really fell in love with it. I'm sort of surprised that, Cats being my first musical, that I wasn't completely terrified. If you haven't seen the musical, it's cats singing, and how that's not terrifying, I don't know. But I guess I really liked it. And then it just so happened that I went to a school that just happened to have a really great arts program. And so I really owe it to teachers. So I started in that program, and it was just kind of one of those things where people just kept telling me and my parents, she's like really good at it. She should keep doing it. And so I was like, well, I guess if I'm good at it, I guess I should keep doing it. So yeah, that's just kind of how it happened. And we then moved down to Florida, and I started doing some sort of professional work down there. But then when it came to studies, I ended up going to Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan, a boarding school. So yeah, and then it's just sort of been history from there.
And where did you go to college?
And then I went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh.
That's amazing. Both of those places were just such fabulous places for you to train.
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate, and just incredible. The people that I met and the connections that I made, and both of those places, I remember at graduation asking myself, so graduation at Interlochen and then graduation at Carnegie Mellon, asking myself if I would do it all over again, and I 100% would. So, which I know isn't always the case. So I feel very fortunate that I had a really incredible education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us, we're not really talking about COVID right now. We're talking about in general, what is the life like of a Broadway actor?
So in general, like when things are normal, it's it's funny. It's a lot of work. We're really like athletes, and so we have to constantly be taking care of our bodies and our voices, and mentally taking care of ourselves. And so it was interesting. Like right when I moved to New York, there was a company that was a production company that was looking into doing a reality series about Broadway professionals, and I think thinking that it was going to be like this really glamorous life and everything. And so for about a week, I had some cameras following me around, and I think they quickly figured out that it's not that glamorous, that it's a lot of, after the show, you're going home and taking care of yourself. So yeah, so even while you're in a show, you're auditioning or doing things like readings or workshops, which is developing new shows. And yeah, I feel like I'm making it sound like it's just work and no play, but it's also just so much fun. Someone once asked me what my favorite thing is about being an actor, and I responded, I was thinking to myself and wanting to go into well, I love this about acting, and I love this about performing, and I love this. And really it came just purely down to being an actor, being in the entertainment industry. I would say 99% of the time, every day I go to work, if I'm in rehearsals or a show or something, I laugh until my stomach hurts.
Oh, yes.
And so, and I would say a lot of people feel that way. So it's just really fun, amazing people. So yeah, so it's fun.
So joyous. I know it's hard to describe. It's kind of like I told you, I was a dancer too, and to describe what it feels like when you're like lost in that in your performance, or when you're rehearsing and the music is playing and you're in the moment. It's the most, it's what keeps you going back and being so exhausted and doing it again because there's you can explain. So so during the day you'll be in rehearsals, kind of like for dance. You're in rehearsals most of the day, and then you're performing, and it's every single night. I don't know how y'all do that every single night for months.
And the matinees.
And the matinees. I mean, like sometimes there are days where there's not rehearsals. Like, you know, once you're in sort of a run of a show, you're kind of just going along with it, and then you'll have some understudy rehearsals and things like that, or you'll have rehearsals for the next show you're doing or things like that. But I think it's I mean, it can get hard, but it's every show is different, and like I said, it's you kind of come up with those little things that keep you going, and you know, those little insider things that you do with your castmates or things like that make it fun. So, but yeah, I mean, there are definitely the days where it's, you know, you don't really know how you're gonna get it together. So, or the days too, because like sometimes it becomes, even though, you know, you really try to be as present as possible, and that's always the goal, there are just those days where for whatever reason you're not really checked in. And this actually happened to me with Emma, and that wasn't that long of a run, but it was like we were doing it for a while, and Emma, I never left stage, and I just talked the entire time. I was so wordy. So I was just talking. And then one show, I just in the middle of a song, I mean, like the words just left me. And so luckily I was able to I just couldn't get back up. So I jumped to another part of the song, and luckily the band was able to follow me. But anyways, I was like so upset about that it then happened 2 songs later where I was in the middle of a song, and so, you know, it's just like those things happen.
Well, the other thing too, I was going about this. So when you dance with a company, you know, you're with your same people all the time, you know, in different roles, but it's the same company. So when you are like in a movie, or when you're on, you know, in a play, you develop this family, and then a few months later you might have this whole other family that comes into play, right?
Yeah.
So you're part of the group, but you're also alone, you know, in every new experience kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and there is like, that's the beauty of it, and also the sadness of it is like, you create families, and then the show just closes or things like that, and then you know, that family just goes away. But the joy is that the next show will bring a new family. But yeah, it's special. It's really really special. And I think, you know, something, and what's nice about that too is that I've talked to other friends, or even my parents, really, about, you know, you get to a certain age in your life and you sort of feel like it's harder to make friends, you know what I mean? Or make new friends or things like that. But that's something that's pretty great about being in this community, is that you're continuously making friends. So, it's really fun. So yeah, it's fun.
That's lovely.
Tell us about the hours. What would that be like?
The hours, it's, you know, our hours are so strange. So if I'm just in a show, so if, like, let's say it's a normal curtain time. So let's say it's a normal 8:00 show. I'll start. So like, that means I'll get to the theater about 6:30. So that gives me about an hour and a half. So 5:00, I'm, you know, kind of getting myself, like, I'm doing my dinner and like all of that kind of stuff. So it's always funny whenever we talk about our hours. So anyway, so like 5:00 is like, I'm kind of getting myself ready. I get to the theater by 6:30. 6:30, I'm like, I do all of my various warm-ups, whatever that is for that particular show, and get myself all ready. So we'll have the show at 8, and then we probably come down around 10:30. I'll get home around like 11:15. And then, you know, you come off like that you're on a high from performing. So even though, like, even I'll be so tired,
Right.
you still are on a high. So you don't, so I probably go to bed around like 2.
Sure. You can't go, okay, that was it. Good night.
Yeah. So I'll go to bed around like 2-ish. So, and then, I probably wake up around like 9:30, 10.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our hours, which are always a little bit strange, which I think my mom like has never gotten used to. Like if I go to visit home or something and I'm sleeping, past like 9 o'clock, she's like, I don't understand what's happening with you.
I cannot do this routine, believe me.
Yeah, she's like, are you an adult yet? I'm like, I am. It's just I just have a different schedule. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. And talking about forgetting the words and things like that, what about self-care? When there's really no breaks, if it's, this run of a show for so very long, how can you keep yourself mentally and physically healthy with exercise and eating and sleeping and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think for a long time, especially, there was always the people always talked about the physical aspect. So like, yeah, so working out and making sure your voice is in order and all of those things. And it hasn't been until really recently that I think the mental self-care has really come into play. And there's even been talks within our unions, within the actor unions, if you're in a show, there's always a physical therapist.
Right.
And, that you will see and that will work with your body and stuff. And the talks have started to come. It's like, well, we always have a physical therapist, but what about a therapist, like for people to talk to? And because especially like there are certain shows that can get really dark and really heavy, and like what does that do to your psyche? So yeah, and so I always whenever I talk to younger actors, I always stress the importance of finding a therapist and creating a relationship with that person, because the longer you can be in a good relationship with a therapist, hopefully what can happen is that you go in for what I like to call tune-up. So it's, you've now had this really long relationship where I don't have to explain every character in my story, in Lora Lee's life. Like I can just be like, well, so-and-so, and they'll know the whole history there and whatever's going on, or just know my habits with things. And that I just really believe as an actor, if you haven't fully, inspected your own self and understood yourself, and when I say fully, I mean like that's a lifelong journey, but if you're not continuously looking to explore your own inner self and understand your own brain, how can you have the audacity to possibly explore and understand a character's brain?
That makes total sense.
And that, and it's also, it's a really, really hard business. I mean, rejection, no matter what level you're at, is going to be a constant. And that is
so true. And what if you're going through something personally, a breakup or someone's sick in your family, and then you have to go on stage every night and be
yeah,
in the stone or whatever, you need some Mason.
Yeah.
Is it Linda Mason, right? No,
and Holiday Inn. Yeah, Linda Mason. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that was an interesting, something really interesting that happened during Holiday Inn is that the election happened during Holiday Inn. And, I think that most people can understand that in the Broadway community, we were not that happy with how the results came about. And that was a very strange time where it was like this whole cast and the audience of understanding this very big thing happened. But when you go to the theater, there's sort of like a contract between the performers and the audience, which is for 2.5 hours, we're going to be present with each other.
Right.
And what do you do when something so massive has happened that that no one is really 100% present? It was very interesting, but also knowing that like that's our job. Our job is to be those 2.5 hours. Like, I am fully here and fully present, and whatever's happening in the outside world personally or on a global scale is not affecting me.
Right. That's
Which is one.
difficult sometimes, I'm sure.
It is. But it's also, sometimes it's also a great thing, because it's also can be an escape where it's like, oh, great, I don't have to deal with my life for these 2.5 hours. I can deal with. Yeah.
Back to their childhood.
Yeah.
Goodness. Tell us about the audition process, and so the rejection and getting it, and how often you have to go on auditions, and then when you're learning the role, what does that look like? To memorize all the things.
I know. So auditions, they're constantly happening, which sometimes I love auditioning and sometimes I really don't like auditioning. I mean, I've always said that my version of success is that I don't audition anymore, that I'm what we call offer only.
Yeah.
But auditions, like they're constantly happening. Even when you're in a show, they're constantly happening, because you just never know if that show is going to close, or or you're also unfortunately also looking for the next thing, like maybe whatever the next thing is going to be. And so auditions are always happening, and I guess it sort of depends. Like, some weeks I go every day on an audition, and some weeks I'll have one audition. It just really depends. And then in terms of rejection, I guess it never gets easier, but for me personally, at least, like, I've grown the tools, or cultivated the tools to deal with it the best way possible, so that it never, like, I use the example of, like, so rejection, let's say rejection used to set me back where I would be in a funk for 2 days or whatever it is. And I've now gotten to the point where I have tools that the rejection will keep me in a funk for 2 hours or whatever it is. And obviously, like, it also varies given the project, if it's something that, but it's interesting though, because, like, sometimes, and I was actually talking to my therapist about this, that there are times where if there's a project I really, really want and I don't get it, sometimes that rejection doesn't hurt as much, because especially when those projects that I really want, I know that I gave everything I could, and that it just wasn't meant to be, that, like, for whatever reason. And it's actually the projects that I maybe didn't want that much, and I didn't put a lot of effort in, and I don't get them, that hurt more, because it's like, wait a second, I didn't even care about you.
Right.
I didn't even really try, and I still didn't get it. Okay, what does that say? You know what I mean? So we're all those
Absolutely.
self-sabotaging.
I think by the time you get to marriage, you realize, like, a lot of times, let's say you didn't get the role you wanted, and you just can't get past it. And then a role comes along that you're so much happier in, that you wouldn't have gotten to do if you had got, it's like later you go, okay, now I get it. Now
Yeah.
I'm karma, or whatever it is, whoever was guiding me knew what was going to happen, so
Yes.
just try not to let it be too upsetting. That comes with age, I think, being able to understand that.
Yeah,
for sure.
What is the most magical thing about being a part of a Broadway production?
The most magical part of being in a Broadway production. I really think that it goes back to being a part of a company, and that seems somewhat selfish to say, because I think a lot of times people will answer like, oh, the joy that it brings to audiences, and, like, don't get me wrong, that's amazing, it's so amazing. And to hopefully, maybe it's someone's first Broadway show, and that's always really exciting, or there's just or that you helped someone escape for 2.5 hours or something like that. But I think really the most magical part is is getting to be a part of a cast. It's just a cast and a crew, because even like the relationships that you have with your dressers and the people that are pulling the curtains or props, or they're amazing people. So it's that. And then also I would say, and I'm not even saying this just because you guys do fashion and everything, but having original Broadway costumes is magical. It's really magical.
That's so
Just
cool.
everything is perfectly, is perfectly made for you, and your shoes are custom made, and it's really special.
That's really cool. And the feeling I can imagine, just like we would feel after performance, like we did it. We all came together. We pulled this off.
Yeah. No, it's always really magical. It's fun.
Your turn.
Okay, well, my turn. I was going to ask about her.
Okay. Pivoting during COVID. How have you pivoted during COVID?
Oh gosh. I feel like I'm like constantly pivoting. I feel like everyone is figuring things out. So pivoting during COVID, I would say in the beginning, the pivoting was, okay, how do I use this time to better myself, and going back into the self-care, and okay, I'm going to all these things that we say that we will do in regular life but don't do. So a lot of just doing like a lot of reading of self-help books and like writing and things like that. And then when it just like sort of seemed like things were going to take a little bit longer, I've been teaching voice lessons over Zoom, which I really love teaching. And again, I feel like all of my answers are coming across very selfish, but like, again, in this very selfish way, it going back to that, the amazing education and training that I've been able to have, in teaching. All of that training that I received is like coming out of my mouth. And there's those moments where I'm like, that was like really good. I should start using that. Do you know what I mean? Like reminding myself that, oh yeah, why not actually use your training, Lora Lee? So selfishly, I'm reminded of all of the training that I've received. But I really love teaching. So it's been great over getting to do that over Zoom. And so I do voice lessons and acting coaching, and I've been doing some like master classes with different companies and stuff, which has been really lovely. And then I've been doing some readings and things that, when people are developing shows, that's what we do a lot of readings and workshops. So companies have been trying to figure out, how do we do this in the time of COVID? So doing that over Zoom, which is always a little frustrating. So I've been doing that. And then, which I think you guys will probably get to, is the organization that I started, Hysterical Women, I have been really focusing on that a lot during COVID.
We're very excited to talk about that for sure. So let's just jump right to it. Let's tell everybody all about it. Oh, and also, so with these Zoom, the voice lessons, are you booked all the time? We'll talk about how people can reach you, but can anyone like reach out to have a lesson, or?
Yeah, anyone can reach out to have a lesson. And
pricing and all that.
Yeah, and we'll figure that all out. And oh gosh, I don't know if you noticed, like the whole lighting just changed because we're getting a tropical storm here.
Yes,
I heard.
We're getting so like it was like it all went dark. So anyways, hopefully it won't get too dark.
We had a storm 3 weeks ago. Now y'all are getting one.
Yeah. So yeah, anyone can do it, and the best way to reach me is to private message me on Instagram. That's usually the best way that people get in touch, or you can email me, and that's my name, just Lora Lee Gayer at gmail.com.
We'll go over that.
No, I'm pretty. I always we can always figure out times, and I think what's been kind of nice during this is that in the past I would only have X amount of time, and now the days are free. So we have time.
I need to take as much advantage of as I can right now, so that when back in real life, I don't think, oh, I wish I'd done this when I had the time.
Yeah.
Does that make
I
sense?
know. I feel like I had that this morning that I was sort of questioning, okay, have you been really doing as much as you can during this time? And kind of that quick anxiety feeling of like, okay, I don't have a six pack. I haven't learned how to bake bread. I don't have, another degree yet. So it's like all of these things, but I think everyone's feeling that way a little bit.
Right.
I know there's so much pressure. All those quotes at the beginning of COVID, they were talking about, what was it? I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
just
yeah,
all the
yeah.
quotes about what everyone can and should be doing.
Someone discovered electricity during the Spanish flu or something like that.
Oh yeah. And it was also like, I know a lot of playwrights, especially right now, were feeling, because Shakespeare actually wrote a lot of his shows during plagues. And it was actually interesting. Like, I didn't even know this, that there was like a 4-year period or something. And it was like when his biggest one, like, it was like Macbeth, Lear, I don't know, and 2 others. And out of those 4 years, the theaters in London were only open for 9 months.
Wow.
Which all of us were like, please don't do that. I really hope that doesn't happen. But I think they were saying, like, during one of those times when it was shut down, he wrote King Lear. So everyone's like, I'm expected to write my King Lear right now.
Right. A little pressure there.
Yeah.
That's so true. What a funny time we're living. Okay, so let's now talk about the Hysterical Women's Society. I love the name.
Thank you so much. So the Hysterical Women's Society, it was founded almost exactly a year ago, and it came out of the abortion bans that were sweeping our country last year. And basically what it was is that I have always been pretty outspoken about my beliefs, especially when it comes to women's rights. And so when this started, I found a lot of people friends in my community, in Broadway especially, were reaching out saying like, hey, I feel like you would know, like, can you explain to me like what exactly is going on? And like, okay, what do we do about this? And all those kinds of things. And sort of realizing that there was a group of people who had a lot of platforms, their own individual platforms, that were very passionate about this, and saw an opportunity for us to come together and do something. And it was also that I had always questioned why the Broadway community, there hadn't really ever been a very strong women's initiative, considering the fact that most performers are women, and also knowing that the Broadway community is, when it does come together, is very powerful. That, when the AIDS epidemic had happened, Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS was started, and completely changed the course of research and communication when it came to the AIDS epidemic. And so brought together all these people. And it kind of just, once we started, it sort of blew up from there. And across like social media and everything, of being a place to inform people about women's rights. And because I am a big believer, and we are a big believer as an organization, that true change comes from individual conversation. So we can all be in the streets with our signs and yelling, my body, my choice. But it really comes down to the conversations that we have with like-minded people, and also in those conversations with like-minded people, help us to better communicate with people who don't agree. This is one of the things that we always talk about when people are joining us, are newly joining us. So for instance, I'll just ask you guys the question. Who do you think what does the average person look like who has an abortion in our country? Age, race, economic status, family life.
they look like a female.
Yes.
And they're dying to have an abortion.
Yeah.
You know, that it's something that they have to make a very difficult choice. So
Yeah. And so what's always interesting is that, and again, like even when I started this, I didn't know it, was that the average person who has an abortion in our country is 32, already has 2 kids, and has a partner. So to me, that's a really different story, that here's a person who already has a family and is making a really tough decision, that is saying, okay, I've got 2 kids and I might be struggling already to give them the life that I think that they deserve. And I know if I have a third that I might not be able to with the other 2 kids. So again, it's that kind of information. If we can have actual conversations with one another rather than just yelling and saying the same thing over and over again, my body, my choice. Like if we can make it personal, if we can have those personal conversations and that personal information, it changes it. So yeah, so anyway, so we did that in the course of I think it was about 4 months. We raised over $75,000.
wow, that's great.
And yeah, and then over this past year, we've raised about over $130,000, and this has gone to various organizations. And then through our fight this past year, we have learned so much about intersectionality, and the idea is that there is no reproductive justice without racial justice. There is no criminal justice reform without racial justice. And so recognizing and realizing that we wanted to create platforms that allowed anyone and everyone who are fighting for human rights and human justice to have a place to inform others, and that we wanted to help facilitate that. So, you know, instead of calling ourselves activists, we're calling ourselves activators, which is we want to activate others to get involved. Hopefully by hearing from someone, hearing from a different group, it will spark something within those people to join and to also get that information, and to then share that information with another personal conversation. So yeah, so we, at the start of this year, we had a bunch of plans of things, in-person events that we were going to be doing. And obviously then COVID happened and we had to switch over to virtual. And so we've been doing every other week, we have different events. And so at the beginning of the virus, we were doing more fun things, like we did Pilates for your privates, which was really fun. And we loved that because it was an education of women understanding their bodies, which I think isn't always taught in schools or just in general, of like, okay, this muscle is this muscle and this muscle is this muscle, and what does this mean, and all those kinds of things. And we had people that were either, you know, pregnant, and how great it was for them to learn about those various muscles, postpartum, and learning about those, and or not pregnant at all, just for sexual health. So we did things like that. We had a sex therapist on who also talked about, you know, what does this look like in the terms of quarantining with your partner, not quarantining with your partner, you know, all of those kinds of things. And then, but then we also do things where we had someone who works with Facebook and was part of the team of coming up with all different tools for small businesses on Facebook, and tools especially for when it came to businesses going virtual during this time. So teaching what those different tools are, and digital marketing and things, because we want to do that. And then when Black Lives Matter and the protests really took the forefront of everything, we started partnering with an organization called Kinswomen. Kinswomen was started by 2 incredible women named Hannah and Izu. Hannah is a white woman and Izu is a Black woman. And they have discussions about how and what we should be doing to bridge the gap between white women and Black women. And that's been really incredible, because I fully believe that we women are so incredibly powerful. And because we are naturally so empathetic, that we can come together to create change. And so that's been really incredible. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to be having a African American woman who is an abortion provider, and she's going to be talking about the racial disparities that happen in our medical world. You know, why is it that Black women die and giving birth 4 times more than white women in our country? What is that? Why is that happening? And what we can be doing to hopefully put a spotlight on these issues, and then what we can be doing on an individual level to change these things. So
that's great. That's so
if
great.
you get me going on this, I keep talking. I just like don't stop.
It's just not known. And it's great to have this time, you know, to have these discussions. And I feel like if you teach a woman something, she can show others the way. You know,
Yeah.
we're teachers too. So especially, and we're also, like you said, empathetic. So we might be reticent to ask each other, is this offensive if I ask this? You know, so like when the kinswomen, when they are talking about this, and, you know, I think that's what needs to happen, where we can all feel like we're on the same team and we're not trying to offend. So sometimes we just don't say anything, you know, so that's part of the conversation is learning how. Yeah. So I think that's
I love that. Actually, Izu brought this up in one of their discussions, and because I asked the question, which was, and I was nervous even to ask the question, which was like, you know, I, especially right now, I feel I'm feeling nervous around my Black friends, and I'm nervous that I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I feel like I'm tiptoeing. And she was like, so what you're feeling is a discomfort. And I said, yes, I'm feeling a discomfort. And she said, okay, what if we can look at it though, instead of looking at discomfort being a negative, but a positive, and that all change, whether good or bad, will have some discomfort. And that in looking at the discomfort as a positive is that the discomfort being is just a hyper awareness just of being hyper aware, and that we can look at that as a positive. And that just completely changed my views around it, of like, yes, right now, and probably for a long time, I will feel a discomfort with Black friends, and it's making sure that I see and hear and understand them to the fullest extent. And to me, I think that's really beautiful and special to look at it that way.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So will you sing us a song?
Yes. Okay, I have to, like, this is the thing now during this COVID time, I have to be like my own sound engineer and all of those things. So give me 1 second just to get it all set up. So I know we said this before we started this. I just love that we're all matching.
I know. We're all matching, and we're bright and cheerful, and we're bringing a little joy to everybody right now.
I know.
Right after we talk about this very serious stuff, now we have a little bit of a.
I know. It's sort of a weird thing to go right into, isn't it? Okay.
It reminds me of the way my kindergartners, when I taught kindergarten, when they had something very serious happening, they could handle it for a little while, then they'd have to go away and play. And then they would come back and handle the tough stuff. And that's kind of the way that we need to do it too.
You know, I even like with the hysterical women, so there's like a core group of us, of about 7 of us. And I would say especially at the beginning of, you know, with George Floyd's murder and things like that, it was just, we were taking on this of educating ourselves and reading everything, and we all kind of agreed like we had to take time. It's like it's okay to go and watch trashy reality TV for hours. You know what I mean? Like you have to.
Right.
It's a long haul, and just to like do those other things, like, and and if you're doing the work, you're doing the work. But it's like it's okay, and like even there was a stand up. Oh, do you know Hannah Gadsby?
I think I've heard of her.
She is, I guess you would just say, because I don't want to say she's a stand-up comedian.
Right.
She's a performance artist, like, but the way that she does things is like in as a stand-up. She's on Netflix. It's so great. Like her first special, I think, was called Nanette. I think that was it. And then her second one is called Douglas. It like you will, I mean, I'll just speak for me. I like peed my pants whenever I watch her. It's so funny. But you're still like learning stuff. But I remember like it was like one of the first, it was like 3 weeks into the protests were in full force and things like that. And I just like for a night watched that. And I was like, guys, I just laughed so hard and it was so necessary.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to make sure I have this all put together. I'm usually, if people ask me to sing, I'm usually like recording and then sending it to them. So to have the live,
I know.
Crazy,
it's hard. It's really hard.
Okay. Just making sure. Okay. Sorry.
No, you're great. I thought
I also have a question too. Do you guys ever do like editing, go back and like?
We can, sure.
We can.
Flip things?
Yes, if we need to.
I'm going to try to do this, but it might be easier if I like record it myself and then I'll send it to you guys and then you can put it in. But we'll see. It should be fine, but just in case, I just wanted to ask.
Absolutely.
Okay. You can put this all in and everyone can see how the sausage gets made. Okay.
There's no pressure.
Tell me, is love still a popular suggestion or merely an obsolete art? Forgive me for asking a simple question. I'm unfamiliar with this part. I am a stranger here myself. Why is it wrong to murmur I adore you when it's shameful, the obvious I do? Does love embarrass him or does it bore him? I'm only waiting for my cue and I'm a stranger here myself. I dream of a day, of a clear warm day with my face between his hands. Have I missed the path? Have I gone astray? I ask, and no one understands. Love me or leave me, that seems to be the question. I don't know the tactics to use. But if you should offer a personal suggestion, I'm only waiting for my cue and I'm a stranger here myself. Please tell me, stranger, my curiosity's goaded. Is there really any danger that love is now outmoded? I'm interested especially in wondering why he wasted. Your romance is so fleshly, with what have you replaced it? What is your latest foible? Is Rami more exquisite? Is skiing more enjoyable? For heaven's sakes, what is it? I can't believe that love has lost its glamour, that passion is really passé. If gender is just a term in grammar, how can I ever find my way since I'm a stranger here myself? How can he ignore my available condition? Why these Victorian views? You see here a woman with a mission.
I must discover the key to his ignition. And then if he should make a diplomatic proposition, how could I possibly refuse? How could I possibly refuse? When I'm a stranger here myself.
Wow. Amazing. And how do you remember all the words? There's so many words.
Truly, right now, I mean, I don't all the time, and I was a little bit nervous because it's like a muscle, you know. And right now that muscle is not being worked.
Well, that was amazing. That was thrilling.
Yeah. So cute and so much personality. Oh, good. So how can we support Broadway actors during this time when they're not able to work? So there's a couple of ways. One of them would be, and I think that I like even hate to say it because I think at this point so many people are like, they have their representatives on speed dial at this point. But one of them is to call your representatives, especially your state representatives, and say that the country, the arts is important to the country, and there needs to be a stimulus package to keep the arts alive. The UK just passed, I think it was almost a $2 billion stimulus package for the arts, and that's Broadway, that's museums, and I think what's so interesting right now is there was a great I think it was the New Yorker, there was a great New Yorker cartoon, and it was like this woman on a Skype call, and basically it was like, well, during this time of self-reflection, and as we're all enjoying our Netflix and books, there is no money for the arts. So, it's just interesting that like the thing that's probably kept most of us sane is the arts, and yet somehow we're not finding funding for it. So call your representatives and say that we need to do that. And then another way you can is by specifically Broadway is donating to the Actors Fund. The Actors Fund is, it's a really incredible place that helps, if artists really are struggling. And I think that's been happening right now, where there's been artists that, let's say they can't pay their rent or medical bills or something like that, will help them. So yeah, those are the two ways for right now. And take voice lessons from us and things like that. And then I think it's also interesting too, maybe people can look internally in their own companies, and if there's some way that an actor could somehow help, which is, I've done some consulting work with different companies for people to learn how to be better speakers or things like that. So looking internally in your own companies, and maybe there's a way that performers can help better your company during this time. Yeah. Incredible. And tell us about how much money that Broadway makes in New York City. That's the thing too, like I was just saying, of how it's sort of shocking to me that a lot of the politicians really haven't talked about this, is that, Broadway brings in billions of dollars every year for the state of New York. It brings in more money than all three sports teams combined. And we have over 40 million more people come to Broadway than all of the sports teams combined. It makes more money than the Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island combined. And that directly affects restaurants, hotels, even just like street artists that, on the subways, like things like that. So, I've been kind of shocked, specifically talking about New York, we're going to have a big problem if one of the biggest money makers isn't there, and we're not talking about that. Like, what are we going to do? And that there's tens of thousands of people that won't have jobs, and that it's not just performers, but, I was saying, like, those beautiful costumes that get made. Well, there's the designer, then there's the seamstresses, there's even like, the people that make the shoes, the people that make the specialty hats, there's all of these things. So the wig designer. So there's tens of thousands of people that
aren't going to have jobs. And, you know, I think sometimes what is hard for people is that it seems like it's hard to imagine that these are our careers. Like these things that so many of us have been doing since we were young. And it's like, well, it's, yeah, like, I'm glad you were having fun, but things get hard. So now you've got to switch careers. And it's like, no, it would be, it's the same thing as if you were, I'm trying to think of if you were on Wall Street and somehow Wall Street completely collapsed and they're like, okay, well, you've got to figure out a new career. And, you know, it's hard. So, and
New York without it. You know, the people that feel that way, okay, imagine a New York without Broadway. What would that be?
Right.
It wouldn't be New York. I mean, you know.
Right, exactly. So, you know, and there's so many other theaters around the country, like who
And
bring their community such joy. And yeah, I just think the arts is really important, you know, and we're also talking about symphonies and ballet, you know, ballets and ballet companies. And so it's just, I just am a huge believer in that a society's strength a lot of times comes from the arts. And if your arts aren't strong in your society and in your country, then your country and your society cannot be strong. So yeah, I think it's really important that we pay attention to it.
So very much.
No one really knows the answer to this question right now, but we did have what's next for you.
Oh no.
Laughing through the tears.
I wish, you know, I really don't know. You know, what's interesting is that, you know, I'm actually a little bit, I'll tell you what I'm working on now, which I'm actually very nervous to say, and I don't even know if I should say it out loud. But, you know, in talking about switching and careers or figuring out different things, like I love being a performer, and I don't know what it's going to look like, and I'm nervous about it and things, but I've been fortunate that I have found this, I'm very, very passionate about the work that I'm doing with hysterical women, and through that have become more engaged with it and realized that I want to, take from Hamilton, I want to be in the room where it happens, and I want to be a part of change, and I want to be a part of policy making. And so I am taking this time and I'm studying for my LSATs. So
you're a natural public speaker.
Right. That's kind of the thing where I was like, well, I've already got, like, a lot of people struggle with that part. So that's fine. So who knows? We'll see. Maybe I'll do that, and then we'll see what happens. So it's kind of like in Chicago, you know, you razzle dazzle them. So maybe I'll just razzle dazzle them a little bit.
Oh my!
You're gonna blow them all away.
Oh yes.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so one more time, let's tell everybody where they can find you. So
you can find me. You can find me on Instagram, which is Lora Lee Gayer. If you just type in Lora Lee, and I spell my name a little bit funny, which is LORALEE, 2 words. So if you can find me on Instagram, and then also, you know, if you're interested in voice lessons and things like that, you can email me at LoraLeeGayer@gmail.com. And then for the Hysterical Women's Society, same thing. You can find us on Instagram, which is Hysterical Women's Society. And you can also find us on our website, which is hystericalwomensociety.com. Yeah.
Awesome. So proud of everything you're doing.
Goodness.
Thank you. This was such a joy. It's such a joy, and I really can't get over the fact that we're all matching. I really love it.
So funny.
Well, it's bright and joyful. We need a little happiness.
That's right.
I know.
That's a good one. Storm. Right. It's like every day.
Something.
So true.
This has been fabulous, fascinating, lovely. What a gift. Everything. We just
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy.
Right.
Such a joy. And I'm so excited for what you guys are doing. I just think it's really special. It's really, really special.
Sweet. just say that. Well, thank you everyone for coming on the Style That Binds Us show. Thank you to Lora Lee for her time and her beautiful song. And you better go and support Broadway in any way that you can, and Lora Lee and all of her friends and colleagues. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.